Right, you're watching In the Market here on AM Live, and we want to drill deeper to our discussion this morning. But of course, if we have our panelists here, they can weigh in on one or two matters as far as the standard gauge railway is concerned, with new development that we have right now, that yes, there is a public-private partnership that will make sure that that particular dream of the SGR extension is realized to Malaba. Allow me to introduce them this morning. We have Collins Odote, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, also a columnist with the Business Daily. We have also with us Dr. Bitange Ndemo, Professor Bitange Ndemo, who is also a lecturer at the University of Nairobi and a columnist as well with the Business Daily. We have Charles Kalomba, Engineer Charles Kalomba is the General Secretary, Jua Kali Sector Federation. And we are eagerly waiting. I can see also I've just gotten an SMS there from Peter Biwott, who is the CEO of Export Promotion Council. He says, apologies, I'm unable to come early today, forgive me. So we're going to be one man down from the panelists. But nonetheless, the conversation continues apace. Maybe we can just begin with Dr. Bitange Ndemo on this particular development and looking at what is on the front page of a Business Daily. We had these dreams, of course, the president and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga went to China and they were denied, an extension of some loans to try and make sure that SGR is, extended from Naivasha all the way to Malaba as well. You can just weigh on this, the critical component of the PPP as well, as we can see now. At least there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you for the question. My views are actually much more different, because what happens is we get to know that we are going to look for resources. We have a PPP arrangement. We have never seen a business case. Mm-hmm. I say this because if you saw the amount of money Kenyans in the diaspora have sent home in the past 5 years, is way far more than the financing of the SGR from Mombasa to Nairobi. Mm-hmm. $10 billion against $3 billion. And when we talk about an extension to Kisumu, could we make a business case and begin to crowdsource from those in the diaspora to invest in a viable project? Mm-hmm. Nobody has done that. Any business that you try to do, there must be a business plan. Mm-hmm. Can we see a business plan and ask Kenyans who are willing to invest in that? Mm-hmm. Because when you do the railway, you are actually impacting on those who have already invested in the trucking industry. Mm-hmm. Could they be allowed also to invest in such a venture? Because, of course, they lose in terms of their investment. I think we need to do a business case and say, this is the amount of money we'll be making from this. Who is willing to put their money here? Mm-hmm. These are the new ways of actually raising money. We don't have to always go out to borrow from foreigners, because we have a lot of, it has been demonstrated that we can get a significant amount for such developments.
And of course, we'd seen earlier that this had created a frosty relationship between us and the Western countries as far as China is concerned as well, because we were looking, to the east. But right now, it seems also it's opening up that particular door that seemingly was actually closing in on us, that mm-hmm. yes, now Kenya can actually go back to, Western countries to try and seek out these loans. Let's hear from Collins Odote.
Dibal, we've discussed the issue of SGR for long. In fact, I think the last time on the show, we're having a debate as to whether it is political considerations or economic considerations mm-hmm. that are at the heart of the move to Kisumu. But I just want to make 3 or 4 quick points. The first is we are told that the private firms will put in 21 billion, and that will save us from borrowing, from incurring more loans. I'm not sure that that is fully accurate, that we will not be incurring more debt, because whether it is from China or from private firms, that money will have to be repaid somehow. It's only the modalities that changes. So I think it is important to make the point that we'll actually still be doing this with the money which is external to Kenyan resources. Mm-hmm. But I think the second, and I agree with Bitange, the economic viability of the SGR
Yes.
is something that has been contested for quite a long time. And nobody seems to know fully about the financing and the repayment of the whatever loans that we put into place.
Yes.
You hear now conversation that the Western Circuit is not economically viable. But I don't think you can talk about economic viability from Naivasha to Kisumu or from Naivasha to Malaba. You must talk about economic viability from Mombasa to the border at Malaba, because you need to look at it in totality. The reason why that's important is when initially SGR was conceptualized, it was actually supposed to, first the Kenya-Uganda Railway was a Kenya-Uganda Railway. It was not a Kenya Railway, it was a railway for East Africa. Even now, as you see the conversations, this report is coming in the midst of Uganda having had a delegation coming back here. Because at the end of the day, the viability of the SGR also depends on the extent to which we can be able to transport goods from the port of Mombasa to our neighbors in Uganda. Because if we don't do so, then they will move on to Tanzania, which is what they started doing in a short while. So I think discussing that becomes extremely important. The third thing is the link between MGR and SGR. You see, if you look at the newspaper, even the Uganda component is upgrading MGR, meaning that they're saying if it is MGR, we are willing to do. And I think for a very long time, people ask the question, why are we constructing a second railway when we have the old one? Now, government is saying, as we wait to build a new one, we will upgrade MGR. I think this again boils the question, was it really value for money in terms of constructing a new railway? We seem only now to be upgrading MGR because we don't get the loan from China. What does that mean about our decision making? Do we make decisions based on economic viability, or do we make decisions based on temporary convenience?
So it's actually seeming that we were shoehorned to go to the meter gauge railway. We had no other option to just revive it.
Yet
Pick it up from the from the ground.
Yet that should have been our first option. We should have been saying it is not viable to go the MGR route. That's why we're doing SGR. So if we didn't get the loan from China, we could not have fallen back to MGR. It means that we were forced into going to it. Yet eventually from that decision and from the concerns that people raised, including by the World Bank, the MGR was actually a viable option from the start.
Right, let's hear from Engineer Charles Kalamba.
Yeah, thank you, Dibal. Mine, I will just ask myself a question, the first question. What are the Chinese doing different from us that they must give us a loan? That's the question I should ask myself. Number two is, when I look at SGR, it is designed to process like it's a research project. So nobody cares what is the input versus what is the output. So what is the expenditure? If you look at the costs, they're exorbitant. Costs are very exorbitant. So it cannot sustain this economy. And of course, from the onset, we were told that there is a dry port designed for Naivasha. And this dry port is supposed to be owned by key people in this country. And maybe it could be a strategy that the SGR comes from Mombasa to Naivasha, and that's the end. So we are not aware. Number two is that we've made people tired of borrowing. We borrow morning, borrow evening, borrow at night. And of course, even if they refuse, they have no reason to be blamed. They have refused, they have refused. Can we come up with a strategy to make sure that SGR will be complete? Now, Uganda is looking at us so that they can join it to the MGR. What that show to us, the president of Uganda was here one time and he said he's buying pepper from Ireland, which is smaller than Kenya, and he used to buy pepper from Webuye. Now, he asked one question, we have not answered him. Who is sleeping in Kenya? Even on SGR, who is sleeping in Kenya? Yeah, we just need to ask ourselves, is there somebody sleeping in Kenya that we must task to be able to give us a resource on what we are looking at? Because SGR would be a very important project because goods will be ferried from Mombasa quicker to Western region, and of course even to the borders, and the economy. So somebody's sleeping.
Right, somebody's sleeping. Changanemo, can see you.
I think let's open this debate much broader. Ethiopia built the railway from Djibouti to Ethiopia because it's a landlocked country. Who is benefiting from SGR going all the way to the border? It is the landlocked countries. We did not pay a coin when the British built the MGR. They were using it to extract resources from Africa's interior. Who would benefit from SGR I think it would be those countries that have interest in the Congos to extract the minerals. As we are just giving land where it passes, we shouldn't actually be financing it. We never financed the first one, and we shouldn't finance even the second one, because the value proposition is not for Kenya. The value proposition is for those who are landlocked to get to the sea. So we are trying to say, okay, we are doing our part. If we can do it to Kisumu and stop there, that's our part of the deal, because we are pulling resources from Kisumu to the coastal town. So the beneficiary of the SGR are the countries that are landlocked, so that they can export. This is what Seven was talking about. How then do we finance the whole thing by ourselves?
Yes, that's a good question.
But
yes,
just two things, Vitanga. You know, the first is we lost that debate when Uganda and Rwanda pulled out of the original conversations because of the economics of it. Because initially it was supposed to be that way, but they pulled out. We were saying the cost you are putting into this is not economic viable. So we lost the debate. But the second is, while we can stop at Kisumu because we are pulling resources from Kisumu, the people in Busia will ask you the question, but Honorable Foley Wakoli used to ask too, what about Busia? Because Busia too is part of Kenya. So unfortunately, currently we will be delivering something that benefits Uganda without Uganda paying for it. And that's why they are now interested in this conversation, because the time that we were supposed to have a shared economy, we fell into the trap of our overpricing. And eventually they pulled out, but we are now building something that's going to benefit them without them putting in any resources.
The issue also of the special economic zones that were to create around Naivasha, that land will be leased to the Chinese as well. I don't know how, if you're really privy to that information.
Actually, I recall it's not just Naivasha.
It's not just Naivasha.
We were looking at an economic corridor from Mombasa all the way to Malaba, and hopefully do what the Indians have done between Delhi and Bombay. What that happens is that you move people to a central place, and that's part of planning for urbanization. I remember that was when we were looking at Vision 2030. We said, let's create a corridor that goes all the way, attracts people to move into this space, which is much cheaper to organize. Now we are doing things in bits here and there. Now we are talking about Naivasha, without actually talking about Gilgil, without talking about Nakuru. If we had done a high-speed rail from Nakuru to Nairobi, or from Nairobi to somewhere in between, and the people lived in those corridors, we'll cut the cost of transport. And then in terms of people going to work, affordable housing and other things. So if SGR was conceptualized well, it would have conceptualized 2 lanes so that you can now have people spread. Instead of living in Kibera, I can live in Nakuru because it takes 30 minutes to be Nairobi. That's the conceptualization of SGR as a cargo was wrong. And that's why I'm saying we need to look at the business case. How do we recover this money within the shortest period of time? We can't recover it that fast if we focus on only one aspect of what the railway can do.
Finally, Onita, let's hear from
yes, this one would have mitigated very well on the rural-urban migration, because Kenya is leading almost in the whole world on rural-urban migration. So people in the rural areas, they know very well, if I go to the urban areas, I will make life. And then there's the class where we are saying middle class, lower class, and upper class. We are not graduating from the lower class to middle class. So SGR would have been a mitigation, and a serious mitigation, to make sure that people are going to graduate from where they are to where they need to be. This model has worked very well in Gujarat. I went to see the model in Gujarat in India, and of course the industrial corridor of Gujarat is bringing a lot of results. So Kenya is struggling to say, can we do what you call rural industrialization, whereby people can manufacture from the rural areas and they can export to the urban areas. So that would be a serious mitigation if SGR was going to work. But I foresee darkness, because when we lose loan, and then we are saying private sector will fund. We don't have the private sector we're talking about. Who is the private sector in Kenya? Who is willing to fund? When they have seen all these shambles, they have seen the messes, they have seen the stealings, they have seen the corruptions, would you think the private sector would be able to venture into this initiative to put in money when they know very well their money will not hold? So I doubt whether the private sector will move in, including what Professor you are saying, with the Kenyans in Diaspora Association. And Kenyans in Diaspora, they are remitting money in this country. Yes. But if you look at the capacity of what the money is doing in this country and what is the return to their lives, it is wanting. So you can't find anything around there. So the diaspora guys will not just be there pumping money into the country and money going into pockets of few. Yeah.
Right. When we circle back, of course, we want to also look at the county expenditure management as well. And if at all, maybe we need to review the Public Finance Management Act as well, as far as financing is concerned. Also, the management of universities, and I think I have lecturers here, we can actually talk about it briefly this morning. I know this will just be also coming from the left side for them. I had not prepared them on this, but of course, since it's now actually on the front page also of a Star, maybe it's as high time we critically look at what is happening also with the management of universities as well. So we take a short break right now. When we circle back, we continue with more. You're watching In the Market here on AM Live. Welcome back. You're watching In the Market here on AM Live, and I'm holding court this morning with Professor Bitange Ndemo from the University of Nairobi, also Dr. Collins Odote from the University of Nairobi, and both also are columnists with the Business Daily. Also, we do have with us the Secretary General of Jua Kali Federation of Kenya. This is Charles Kalomba as well. And we're looking at the state of economy on a raft of other, and a raft of issues that we're actually highlighting. One of them that we've discussed as well is the SGR and its viability of, since now that we didn't get that particular loan from Naivasha to Malaba as well. But there is some good news, and also that is well covered on the front page of the Business Daily. That is with the PPP. If that really pans out, then it means that connection with SGR, with the meter gauge railway, will happen. So far, we want also to see what is happening in the counties as well, where the Kiambu County government has admitted failure to follow proper procedure in making supplementary budget seeking 16.5 billion shillings for 2019. The country also sought to withdraw their response in a petition in that challenge, I should say, the process it adopted in the purported implementation of a budget. Justice James Macau said that in view of the withdrawal of the affidavit, of the replying affidavit by the county, it follows that no money shall be removed from the consolidated bank under the faulty budget. The court further issued prohibition orders restraining the county government from implementing the estimates contained in the appropriation budget. But the whole issue now of IFMIS is being thrown into the works as well. The whole issue as well of the Public Finance Management Act as well is being thrown into the mix as well. And we just want to get clarity on all this. Where did we begin? Or the rain began actually beating us, because also members of the National Assembly have rejected the Senate's proposal to increase funds allocated to counties by 20 billion shillings, a move that will likely crash the push for mediation between the two houses of parliament as well. So all this is just within the county management of funds, because they think that the management of funds within the counties is not really up to scratch. Let's just begin with you, Dr. Bitange Ndemo.
I'm one of those people who are saying that we shouldn't increase the amount to counties until we have proper accountability of the resources at the county level. Day after day, you are seeing the misuse of the resources to the extent that they are able to acknowledge that they are not able to manage the resources. I think the problem begins from what we did with the previous systems. The previous system, politicians were never accounting officers. Now you have a politician as an accounting officer, which makes it complicated because they begin to politicize matters that are very serious. I don't think it would make any sense when you see a lot of governors saying, oh, the problem is with the auditors who are asking us for bribes. Those are diversionary tactics. The money is not, the money has already gone, and they are demanding more money. There is a serious problem with accounting for resources at the county level. And much of the resources that is going to the county is actually going to recurrent expenditure. It is not, we didn't create the system to employ people who are not productive at the county level. We created that so that we can get development at the devolved level. That is not happening. Much of the money, you've been hearing, some are hiring without the proper practices of hiring staff at the county level. So we need to sit back and say, where is the problem? Is the problem with the Public Finance Management Act? I think there is a problem in terms of the systems that we have in place to ensure accountability. First, the Auditor General should not be coming looking for resources after they have disappeared. We have technology where he can have visibility on the spending of resources at the county level and be able to stop this from happening. But nobody is listening to what is happening in other places. And I think we need, if there is something we need to change in the Public Finance Management Act, it must be changed that we have somebody who will take care of the resources and politicians take care of political issues. We never thought about each county having an attorney general, because if you look at the systems in the US, every state has an attorney general who advises the state government on how to go about legal issues. Now you have people who don't know law, who don't understand management, who don't understand anything that we have given them the responsibilities for. So that's why I'm saying we need to look at it, have serious management systems at the county level, and avoid this kind of nonsense that we are seeing at the moment.
Right. Collins Odote.
First, I disagree with the Prof about not increasing money to counties. I actually think we should. There's been a debate about the amount of money that counties are allocated. And my reasons for saying we should are twofold. The first is if you look at
But his train of thought is like we should not increase the monies in the counties until we have proper accountability.
I'm actually going to go to that second one. I think we should because of the functions that we've given counties. The functions that we've given counties, if you look at since 2013, are largely underfunded. In terms of misuse, the money that we don't give counties remains at the national level. They don't get used any better. If you look at what the National Assembly has done, increasing the house allowances. So unless you want us to retain that money at the national level, telling us that the national level is making better use of finances, the evidence does not show that. I think the place where Prof is right is about accountability. There's a problem about accountability at the county level. We need to fix that. And that is not a question of how much we give them. It's a question of how we deal with what we have given them. And that's where there's huge problems. When you listen to the debate from the Council of Governors, initially you would actually sympathize with them about the challenges that were coming from IFMIS, until you see the reports today about what the judge has decided. Then it tells you that the problem in Kiambu is symptomatic of the problems at the county level in terms of resources. In fact, Dibala, I may shock you that this issue about the Finance Act of Kiambu has been in courts for as long as devolution has been there. This is actually not the first case. This is around like the fourth case where there is a concern about how the Finance Act of Kiambu was passed. It preceded Governor Waititu, showing you several things, showing you that I think the roles of county assemblies in oversighting and in approving the budget is increasingly not being taken seriously. So that level of accountability is not working efficiently. You don't see county assembly members who are trying to hold governors to account in terms of what monies are allocated and in terms of how the money is spent. So we need to deal with that because that accountability is lacking. The second issue that is surprising, we can't reach a stage where there is budget lines for money which are the wrong things. That the county had a budget line for the peace process in Sudan. You must ask several questions. The first question is, which county assembly passed this budget? Number one, which CEC developed this budget? Number three, which controller of budget approved the budget? Number four, when the monies were being released by IFMIS, what system captured the money? Because by the time it is reaching the Senate, if it is an error, a clerical error, somebody should have picked it out. Everybody has done basic accounts, and you know clerical errors does not reach that late stage, especially clerical errors of that. Because now the question we're asking ourselves, where did the 10 billion get spent on? And number two, what does that mean about our system of accountability? If you have a budget in your house and in a month some lose 500,000, cannot be accounted for, and life goes on, what does that really mean? It means there's a problem about how we are accounting for our resources. I think time has come for us to relook at our system of accountability. I don't think the problem is actually the Public Finance Management Act. That's not where the problem is. The problem is largely about our culture in this country, the culture of accountability. And the Petange may have somehow pointed his finger at the pulse. You know, we seem to think with the advent of the 2010 Constitution that we can politicize everything and get away with it. Because if you are asked, where is this money, the explanation cannot be, auditors are asking me for a bribe. Just tell us, here is where the money is. But people seem to have thought that anytime you ask a legitimate question, the excuse can only be politics. Politics cannot take us anywhere. In fact, the intention of the 2010 Constitution was to take away politics from processes. For me, the nice thing that I am happy about in what is happening in the county funding is, in the old system, we would have been hearing this thing 5 years down the road. Thankfully, with the system of the 2010 Constitution and the work of the Auditor General, we are now talking about the 2017-2018 audit. So we are current, which is a good thing, because then we can fix it to ensure that we don't see this kind of things in the next budget. But in the meantime, somebody must be held accountable. We must be told as Kenyans, where is the problem? Because it's a problem. Is the problem at the level of IFMIS? Is a problem at the level of the county government? Is a problem at the level of the national government? In fact, I think 2 days ago, Governor Waititu was supposed to be on national TV, and he said, no, I've left this thing for the Council of Governors. I think Kenyans are owed an explanation. We need to see the PS of Treasury and people at the county level having a candid conversation with Kenyans and telling us this is where the problem is. We can't just sweep this under the carpet. Remember, in 2008, there was some accounting error. If you remember, some zero.
Yes.
When the current president was Minister of Finance, there was some zero, which was a computer error. And we all know the consequence. We can't allow more computer errors to be taking place, either at Treasury or at the county level. Because those errors eventually end up becoming taxpayers' money.
Right, and of course, errors of housing levy as well was an error. You know, remember it was 0.05%, then it went to 1.5% as well, and they all allude that to what? To error as well.
A correction that computers don't make errors. It's human beings who make errors in entering into the computer.
Exactly.
And we normally blame the computer. But one point I must add is that this aspect we are saying that the counter simply can hold a governor to account for the resources is actually nonsense, because theoretically we thought that when you have an election there would be an opposition which would be like which would flag out issues. In several counties there is no opposition. They are the same people the governor funded to run for county assembly seats, so they could not turn around to do that. So in theory it's okay, but in practice it's not working. That's why I'm saying we need another way of looking at these things, because we understand the politics in Kenya, that even though in theory that's how it's supposed to be, we could do something to create some level of sanity where the county assembly can stand up to the governor.
Right. Let's hear from Charles Kalomba.
On my part, I think I concur with my colleagues here. But I know very well, as long as the governors of Kenya will remain political, because they are elected by the people, their power rests with the people. So anytime you ask them, they have stolen money, they go to the people and they say, they are fighting me. But I saw the Speaker of the Parliament talking about a package for the parliamentarians. And I asked myself a question. Money is being lost from this arm. You are asking us money from this arm. Which law is in the Parliament today that we can hold somebody to account if he has done what the Kiambu government has done? But if you look at it, I was watching a clip in the park and I saw a lion, a male lion. You know, a male lion eating a carcass that has been killed by it. And the organs of the male lion are protruding at the back. Now the small lion, they want to eat, but this guy is chasing them out. And what they did, they went back and they scratched the male organs. When he was in pain, they were on the meat, eating meat. So what normally happens in Kenya is that the MCS, they know that. So they behave like small lions who wants to eat the meat. So they go behind and scratch the male organs. So what the governors are doing in this country, governors, we have the attorney, county attorneys. We have the county attorney. In every county, we have a county attorney, but they have no powers. And you'll find that most of the county attorney are being fought by the governors. Why? Because they want the law to operate, but the law is not operating. So most of them, they just resign. And then number two is that the IFMIS, this thing called IFMIS was birthed after the computer era. Immediately after the computer era, the IFMIS was birthed. Now, end-to-end solution in the IFMIS is lacking. So you cannot hold somebody to account because he did an error. So what we need to do is the parliament should go back and say, create a law that will now engage who did this error, how can we take him to account? Because like Kiambu governor is saying, I'm taking you to the COG. Then the COG is saying, our governor is not wrong. So at what time shall we rest and say, things are not settled in this country and people are hurting? And Dibal, mark you, there is a class of people in this country who don't know poverty. But there's a class of people in this country who don't know even know food. They eat once in a week. So if you imagine that this is a country where people are really suffering, hurting, and we are still lending money to Sudan, we are lending money to what? We are doing benchmarking of rabbits in Russia. People are leaving Kenya to go and see rabbits in Russia. Rabbits that our grandmother has been keeping all the ages. We have been keeping when we are young, we are keeping rabbits. Then people are leaving, entering an aircraft to go to Russia to see rabbits. And I thank God. After the Ethiopian incident, there is no benchmarking, very little benchmarking if you can monitor. Very little benchmarking because people are now afraid. Maybe if I go in the air, something can happen. So people have drawn down to benchmark.
Yeah. But just two quick things
yes.
In response to what my colleague is saying. First is about making more laws to hold people accountable.
Yes.
I don't think the problem is the laws. We have sufficient laws to hold people accountable. Let's just get people to be accountable, hold them accountable. If you look at the kind of things that are happening on the issue of IFMIS, we have the Public Finance Management Act, we have the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and in 2017 we even passed a Bribery Act. I think the excuse of making more laws is just to sidestep the issue. Let's just hold people accountable and get on with it. That's the first thing. The second is I agree with him. There are actually county attorneys in all the counties. The problem is that a lot of county attorneys operate on a very shaky legal foundation. There is actually none. So they get appointed by the county governor and serve at the pleasure of the county governor. Do you
have the attorneys? We don't have the attorneys. I think
they exist.
They exist.
There's actually been a law on county attorneys that has been debated by the Senate.
A law.
Yeah. It was debated by the Senate, passed, went to the National Assembly. It has not been passed. I think the National Assembly needs to pass that law because initially we assumed that the Attorney General would serve all levels of government. But the reality is that the Attorney General serves largely the national government, and counties require a separate legal advice, and that should be the county attorney. So there's need for there to be a law. In fact, while we say they are county attorneys, not all counties have them.
But
some counties just
if we have the county attorneys, under which law are they anchored on if we still have that particular debate in Parliament?
They are not anchored on any law.
No law.
You see, there are many officers at the county level who are not anchored on a law. So when governors came in, they discovered there's a gap. So some governors have appointed county attorneys, others have appointed legal advisors. So the problem is not their existence. The problem, and I think that's what Bitange may have been alluding to, the problem is even if they exist, they don't have the legal powers to do what is required of them. That's what is important. That's what we need to fix.
But the source of appointment is what counts a lot, because they are appointed by the governors, and the governors gives them direction. So they are supposed to be advising the governors, and the governors are advising them. So at the end of the day, they get tired, and they are there because of the premise of, I want to protect the governor on the law. But the law that they are using now, as we talk about the law, then the Attorney General should become, in fact, if you ask me, they are supposed to be members of the Attorney General's office in the counties. Then the Attorney General will be giving them direction, other than the governors.
Right. Bitange, you wanted to say something.
That's what I meant, that if we are going to change anything in the Constitution, we need to look at checks and balances at the county level. But the point I want to raise, you can see the mistakes we made before elections manifesting itself right now. We wanted a governor who is well educated. Then most of them faked their way to become governors. So we need to strengthen IEBC in terms of getting the right candidates. We now have come to know that some of the governors were criminals by their own admission. But we have done nothing. Nobody has gone to court to challenge that, because the law is very clear. If you were a criminal, you cannot serve in any public office. So until we deal with this in the selection or in the election of those who are running for governorship, we would continue to have people who don't understand management of public resources. Because if you've been a criminal, then how do we entrust you with billions of shillings to run?
But Professor, maybe even before you say education,
yes,
we need governors, Dibal, who have integrity and discipline, because that's what we're lacking in the country. It's not education. We need governors who can do proper management of systems, people who respect the people who respect the law. Our governors today, they vie around that. They don't want to respect people, they don't want to respect the law, they don't have integrity. Very few have integrity. If you look at what they're doing, you'll trace integrity in their brackets. Very few of them have it. So what we need is governors, and that's why I was saying, we don't need to elect the governors. We need professional governors appointed by the system to sit in the offices and be accountable to systems. But the moment they are elected by the people, then the governors demand the power of the people, and the people demand the power of the governor. We are losing it.
We are losing it.
Yeah.
Right. Bitange, you wanted to say something before we move on to another subject?
Are we arguing against elections as a means of getting our leadership?
Yes.
No,
because if we do so, we'll be subverting democracy.
No. Since it has been mooted that we would change some aspects of the Constitution, we have had 10 years. We are going to have 10 years of devolved government management. Should it be that we elect the county assembly and appoint the governor? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the law.
And for me, I think it's not going to solve the problem. Look at cabinet secretaries. Initially, we had cabinet secretaries who were elected as representatives. When we then moved to cabinet secretaries who were appointed. I think if you look at the last 7 years, you can't be able to say that the quality of cabinet secretaries has improved because of appointment. I think we need to fix our issue of integrity, and the elections alone is not what is problematic, because essentially for any democracy, election is a most powerful tool. Secondly, the person who is at the control of this country eventually is the president, and that president is elected. So if we don't fix how we elect our people, then even if we have people who are appointed, the people going to appoint them will still be people who have elected. They will still do a worse thing. Look at the kind of people that they approve at both national and county level to serve into various bodies. Their quality is not any better than those we elect. So I think there is a fundamental need for us to shift our calendar. I hesitate to blame elections as worse off than appointment. I don't think we'll get better quality when we go to appointments.
Right. Okay. Still talking about management, we want to see also what is happening as far as universities is concerned before we also go to the topic that we prepared for the day about the fintech and the growing indebtedness that the youthful population is actually getting into right now. Technology is failing me this morning from my touch screen and also from my laptop here, but I'll use this particular headlining story on the Star to just maybe give an inkling of what is happening as far as management is concerned within the university. Remember also the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education, this is George Magoha, had indicated that yes, even moving forward, you might be having universities mergers. So what does that really portend as far as also the management of universities is concerned? Broke UON, KU hold 4 billion shillings of staff cash. Auditor General Edward Ouko warns universities technically insolvent. Universities drowning in debts have spent workers' statutory deductions, including SACCO deductions, NHIF, NSSF, resulting in financial penalties for individual employees. This story also continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Maybe we can just broadly just look at this because I think this has been like a mirage, but it was bound to come, specifically after we had the Model 2 been done away with. And it seems also most of the universities, especially the public universities, they had not prepared for this avalanche that really came afterwards as far as finances was concerned. And this is what is leading into. Many of the universities ventured into projects that they thought by then will actually be also by now remitting revenues back, but now that is not truly happening. Some of the buildings that we have around as well, they're touted to be, white elephants. What is happening within the management of our universities currently, and why should we even have the merger that the CS is proposing? Let's just begin with you.
Yes, if I don't think even if you were to bring geniuses to run our universities can manage to do it.
But maybe the problem question I should be asking before you even venture, do you really agree with what is on the front page of the Star?
There are serious problems at the
Yes,
universities.
there are serious problems.
They're just going with a very small budget. This is because the fees is decided by the government and controlled. And then the expenses rise up and they don't know where to get the resources to do that. When Module 2 was there, I think they used to defray some of the costs using those resources, and those are dissipating. Then there are areas where we should be doing a lot of research and commercializing research. We need a lot of money in order to do that, to be able to do that. For example, in our university, if you go to the admissions in the College of Agriculture, which is very important to this country, 34% of the GDP this year was out of agriculture. But the number of students enrolling in agriculture has completely gone down. We are not making agriculture sexy so that we get more students to go into such places, and then we begin to do value addition and create more products out of it to make these universities financially stable. But the reason why they want to raise fees is actually to be able to cover the cost, because the state has not given them enough resources to do that. And you probably find everything that you are given would go to recurrent expenditure salaries, and you have nothing for development, which I'm talking about, especially research and development. So no matter what, whoever you bring there, and you put those controls, it's not going to work.
But Professor, in this epoch of time,
yes,
where we have universities, especially public universities, renowned, when we have good minds in these universities, don't you think it is a high time that we started not navel-gazing and looking at government to just also be funding the universities, but also you coming up with innovative ways of how actually you can raise resources. Because other developed countries, we have universities also funding some of the government projects as well.
Yes,
but why are we until right now still offering our hands, or our pail there in hand, asking alms from government, so all the funding from government?
If we did that, the state usually intervenes. They say, now we want you to take double intake. You have hundreds of thousands of students around here who are not paying fees. I mean, a lot of them cannot afford to pay. Even if we increase, actually, the increment would mean most of them will drop out.
But what I'm saying, that
yes.
in terms of fees and all increment, I think that will be a non-issue, right? We can pick up some of the private universities around here. They've even come up with the power generation projects that actually they generate power and they supply, power also to the national grid as well. This is what I'm talking about. Can we have innovative ways coming from the universities where you don't have to focus on government funding you, but you can actually be self-funding with your own projects that it is coming out from your own creation?
Actually, there is much people don't know about universities. I said we need money for research to create those innovative products. Some of the private universities, if you find out the fees is like 6 to 7 times more. I mean, our MBA, we charge less than 200,000. Some private universities are charging 1.6 million. They have extra resources for faculty to do research. We don't have that. You compare the salaries, you can't even talk about it. You have to motivate people to work. But if you say, come and teach and find some consultants to do, you don't have people doing the research to create those things. So we need to do what other countries have done. The private sector has to step in, like in the Western world, where they have a chair for, say, breweries chair in this department. So you are fully paid well. You are not running around to moonlight and teach in other places. So everybody's trying to do the best. But if you want to properly manage these universities, I think some of the recommendations made by the new cabinet secretaries, we should begin to look at those things. Every county wants to have their own university without knowing the logistics of sending people to those counties to teach. The same lecturers that you are seeing here, they are the ones who would go to grow these universities. For example, we are doing the university in Nyandarua. University of Nairobi has, you've got to drive to Nyandarua to do that. I think something has to be done in terms of rationalizing the resources and to be able to have a more planned way of managing these universities. The way it is at the moment, it can't work, and you can't blame the managers because no manager can run something where they don't have control of revenue.
Okay, let's hear from Dr. Collins Odote.
Dibal, I think it is the editorial of The Nation today that's talking about the reforms by the cabinet secretary and saying they're long overdue. I agree. Secondly, if you look at the headline for today, the headline today talks about broke UNKU hold 4 billion cash. And I think on this show I have spoken about that, not just for universities, but for all public institutions. I think we have many problems. The first problem is, as a country, we are living beyond our means. And when we live beyond our means, this is the consequence. The consequence, if you look at it, first of all, for a long time, we went into a model of self-financing of universities. That's been the idea behind university reforms. And some professor has written about the danger of our approach in Uganda, about scholars in the marketplace, speaking about Uganda, where you focus on selling education the same way you sell mandazis. And that's what Module 2 was originally conceptualized as, to subsidize, and the consequence that we over-focus on the revenue out of it and not on the education, and that's had impacts. The reality is Module 2 has not been done away with. I taught Module 2 students just last week. Module 2 still exists. The only thing that has happened, the numbers have dwindled. The numbers have dwindled because as a result of the education reforms that are useful, the strange results that we used to get in our KCSE has reduced. So therefore, those who qualify to go to universities can be absorbed in all the universities. There are several problems that we need to solve, if we need to deal with this thing. The first problem we need to solve, and there you are slightly right, we need to move away from a revenue base for universities, which is based on student fees only, because that's not sustainable in the long run. You can't have a focus which is based on fees. And going to the fees, and Prof is right, if you look at the amount of fees that private universities charge and public universities charge, yesterday's newspaper will give you the inkling. Private universities in the same newspaper are complaining to government that you need to add as money for the students that you give us as public students. And yes, I think the day before yesterday, the cabinet secretary said, no, you can charge them for the balance. What does that mean? That there's an admission that the amount of money that they pay in public universities is not possible to sustain them. If you look at the funding to universities, the capitation has been reducing over the years because we have less money. So if less money reduces, you then must borrow from Paul to pay Peter. So what have the universities been doing? They have been borrowing our NHIF, they have been borrowing our NSSF, they've been borrowing our PAYE. And it's not one university, it's all of them. You will not solve that problem, Debal, until you face the reality and ask yourself, what does it mean? The second thing is we need to move universities to be much more reliant on research. And that is how universities in the West even fund the government. But for you to be much more reliant on research, there are several things you must fix. Number one, as a country, we must be willing to put in money for research processes. Because universities don't create that money. There must be some fund for research that universities can apply for and get. Several of us apply for research grants across the world, but you don't have a robust research grant for the country. The second thing is for people to focus on research, you must be able to pay them well. If you go to the West, people even buy their time away from teaching. Here, I was laughing yesterday when I saw the conversations in the National Assembly that you've increased house allowance for MPs to 250,000. The BAL, an ordinary lecturer earns less than 250,000 shillings.
Professor, not lecturer.
250,000 shillings. But that is the amount of money you are giving to MPs as house allowance. I know of my colleagues who are lecturers for long. Because they have now become a politician, now you want to give them a house allowance of 250 and justify it. Yet when he was teaching, even the amount of money he's earning is less than. Then you expect some miracle. We must honestly be serious about our university education. Lastly, the expansion that we've had of university education. A friend of mine told me 2 days ago that maybe Moi was right in controlling the number of universities. I think it was useful to expand university education because it was becoming too limiting. You can't grow as a country unless you have quality education. But I think the expansion was unrealistic. The amount of universities that we have is not commensurate with the population of this country. And the costs for maintaining them, the cost for running them, is such that we must do something as part of these reforms so that we are much more lean. But even when we become more lean, we can then be able to fund university education much more effectively and support universities to move away from being over-reliant on students and being much more reliant on research. Bitanga and myself teach. Everything that worries every university, you are asked two basic questions. Number one, how many students applied to your course? Number two, how many students did you graduate? Nobody cares about the fact that do you have the capacity to be able to supervise all those students? Right. It's just that how many did you maintain? And that is a question that must be looked at in the face. And I hope that when we do so, we don't get carried away by this headline. Because this headline is a symptomatic problem across the entire country. The universities are suffering from much more fundamental issues that require to be fixed, much more than these amounts of money that they're spending from NHIF and NSSF. Right,
but I thought, let's also hear from Charles Colombo, that I thought that also the government had indicated that there shall be a research fund. I don't know if it was a research fund, is it a research fund authority? You heard about it?
Yes, we have
talking about it, yes, but in reality, you don't see it.
What was the idea? Was it a research fund authority for the university that, or what was it? I cannot actually remember.
What I said, we do everything theoretically correct, but practically nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Let's hear from
Yes.
Charles. We'll come to you. Charles,
Yeah, thank you, Dibal. Me, if you ask me, I will tell you universities have failed.
they've failed.
And they have failed totally from corner to corner. And there is no recovery until they close down and go home. Because universities have not made up a decision to go and ask Juakali, how are you doing these things? Because the premix of what the universities are bordering on is education. Education is papers. Until you have knowledge to understand what to do to produce what is on demand, then you are doing nothing. So the university, that's why in the city, you find everybody with a CV looking for a job that he cannot even define, and yet he was trained at the university. A job he cannot define. You ask him, he ask any job, just give me any. Because people who have been out here for 6, 7 years, to 10 years, young guys, until they have come to our sector, boda, they are now riding boda, which means the universities were training people to ride bodas. So if you ask me today, it's not an issue of money. I weigh on what Professor said. If you cannot commercialize your research is nothing. There are universities like in Lund University in Sweden, a small university. They are pushing the whole economy of Sweden into a corner on energy. So what the universities in Kenya have done, and most of them have got tracts of land, you can't believe. Then if Kenya is an agricultural country, why can't we then say agriculture country and people don't know that juice comes from fruits? So university students, they are taking juice, they are eating fruits. They don't know even how to relate fruits and juice. So it's the purpose the university should be formulated to say, can we train a few guys to make juice? Can we train a few guys to make sorghum? Can we train a few guys to do this? Like, I've worked with some universities in the country. They don't seem to understand that this country is anchoring on agricultural backbone. Dibal, irrigation in Gulalu was supposed to be held by one of the universities to say we shall move in, take our students, train them on irrigation, because this is a country where only agriculture is done by prayer. So rain is lost, so people go to prayer because they don't understand what should be done next. So people are praying for rain when they can do irrigation as they wait for rain to come. So universities have failed, and what the universities are doing is they are looking for budgets. And every other institution, including ministries, they are looking for budgets. If you ask anybody, what do you want to do with the budget? They cannot even explain to you or define what the budget is all about. So me, I would say, let's entice the universities to understand how do we come up with innovations, how do you commercialize our research, how do you put products in the shelf so that we can do import substitution. If we go that route, then the students will never look for a job. They'll never look for a job. Because I'm leaving this university, I know how to make furniture. And the country is demanding for furniture. I'll go and make furniture and supply the country. I'm leaving this university, the country is in need of energy. I'll go and do solar energy. So the universities, even the curriculum, if you ask me, there's no curriculum in the university. Only Juakali has a curriculum. Because we train and we employ. Show me one person from Juakali who was training, Juakali who's looking for a job. Show me one. And yet, there's no single university college which has gone to Juakali to ask them, how are you doing these things? Then we can explain to you. So me, if you ask me, it is not a professor, it's not an engineer, it's not a doctor. It's about skills and knowledge and will to do what you want to do. That's what is happening in China. It's what in Japan. Japan is smaller than Kenya. What is happening in Japan? People are benchmarking to Japan to go and see vehicles manufactured. They come back, they stay 10 years, they can't even manufacture a bicycle. They can't make a bicycle. They have been seeing vehicles manufactured, they can't make a bicycle. Nairobi University was handling NMC, Numerical Machining Complex, with Moi. Moi gave you 800 million in Nairobi University. The vehicles you go to Numerical Machining Complex, you laugh and die. Ford Escort, the old one. A university and a rail, and they are doing that. And we have
Dr. Professor Mitangi.
I think he's right to some extent that we have not looked into the policy in education in this country. Our universities are more theoretical than practical. Yeah, there is a move to begin to have universities that are focused in areas of creation, like Germany. Germany has universities that not quite academic, but to do things. And what you are seeing the Koreans bringing in Konsa is an applied sciences university. I mean, they teach you to get to do something. That's where we went wrong. A vice chancellor cannot change that policy. That policy would have to go through the cabinet secretary, go to parliament, and change the whole thing. I think we are going to see a lot more changes coming when you see success from such as Korean. Another German university was looking to put up in Konsa, which is more applied. We don't teach applied, we teach theory. And even those who graduate from computer science, you find them going to places like Moringa School or Andela to finish this. Even in engineering, we need to have the finishing aspects. I think this week you are going to hear some global companies trying to invest in finishing and creating students who are employable. You are right with that respect. We need to change our system to more applied because we are a developing country. Most of us do research in Juakali. I'm in Kariobangi most of the time. But I do it to help with aspects of innovation. For a university to seriously produce things that are commercialized, there will be a lot of resources. If you go to our College of Agriculture, for example, it has taken us almost 10 years trying to find a creamery for those who are studying agriculture so that they can make ice cream and other stuff. That is an element of capitation from government.
The innovation, Prof, the innovation component.
Yeah.
My mother one time, my father said, you will not eat anything in this country, in this house, you will only eat vegetable. And my mother innovated.
Yeah.
She cut a small piece of egg and hide it for me here.
Yes.
And I went to eat it. I never lamented because my father was punishing me, but my mother was blessing me with a small egg.
Yes.
Can I have a lecturer at the university who can say, we are teaching you theory, yes, but I know if you do this and do this and do this, you can succeed in this economy by way of employing yourself. That's what the professors and the lecturers need to do. So we have this thing called entrepreneurship, where everybody, it's the easiest subject in entrepreneurship. If you want to get employment in any university in this country, be an entrepreneurship lecturer.
Yeah.
This guy has no business. He doesn't even know how business works.
No,
Then he's an entrepreneurship lecturer. You are one.
I happen to be a professor in entrepreneurship, and I can show you.
I know you.
No, I can
trace you back to business.
Yes, I can show you so many young people who have produced a product.
Yes.
Because when you teach innovation, you want them to go and produce something.
Yes.
But there is no...
Are your colleagues like you? Because the majority are not.
But you know, the problem, James, is there's a problem that needs to be fixed. The problem is not the individual lecturer.
Yes.
The problem is the system. If you look at the countries we've spoken about, look at what we've done to our polytechnics. The moment you convert a polytechnic into a university, the moment you convert technical training institutes into universities, then you are essentially making the policy decision that we actually prefer this. The moment as a country, you're much more focused on purpose and not on skills, then you find that even somebody whose only duty is to be a watchman is looking for a PhD. Yet they have no intention of changing their jobs.
Correct.
So why are they looking for a PhD? I think what we need to ask ourselves is we need to ensure that we have, if you go to the West, the other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine in Canada, and you have two choices. You have a choice of either going you're either going through a technical institution and getting a diploma, or going through university and getting a degree. And each of these serves different purposes in society. We have made the assumption that things that are practical are supposed to be converted into things that are blue collar, into white collar. That's the mistake we have made, and it's a mistake we've made as a country. And you can't change that by professing them alone. You must change that by socializing the society and by the policy framework to say, you know, we are going to have two tracks. One track that focuses on X, one track that focuses on Y. The last point, debate, just yesterday, you saw the concerns about the failures in Form 4 in sciences and in maths. Once that happens, what is that telling you about our future or innovation? The moment you can't be promoting STEM when at the same time the people who are supposed to be focusing on those STEM have failed at the lower level. So we need to be much more serious in how we address it. And I think it is much more fundamental than the contestation between entrepreneurship and Jokali.
The problems themselves are forcing young people, those who qualified to go to university, almost 1,700 of them rejected university and went to technical schools. to get to do what you are talking about.
My son is among them.
Yeah, and that's a very good decision. Once you have established, if you wanted the papers others want, then you can do it after you are established.
But there is hope.
But the issue is all about the posturing that is out there, that a diploma is in an inferior paper to a degree.
A degree, yes.
Yes, and you find when you're talking about Canada, that is not the case at all. In fact, the diploma is at the same par with a degree as well. But here now it's really inverted. So you look, you looked upon to be inferior if you have the diploma.
The problem is how we are socialized. If Daktari's daughter has a degree and my son has a diploma, himself, he will say, "Huyu mtu hajasoma."
Hajasoma kama huyu.
Why would you marry this? The Westerners have gone beyond that. A Blama marries anybody, you know, and they could stay somewhere.
Okay, Prof, we had that debate with a friend of mine when we were considering schools for our children.
Yes.
And the debate we were being told as the options, you know, he can go and do a diploma and stop there. You know, he can do a degree. And one of us, the child wanted to do a diploma. The other, the child wanted to do a degree. And you should have seen the debate amongst the parents. What do you mean? He goes all the way to Canada to do a diploma, and it's fundamentally because of our socialization. In this country, we all are looking for plumbers. We all are looking for good plumbers.
Even tile fitters, even painters.
Look for any plumber, look for a good carpenter. You'll struggle to get them.
Yeah.
Yet, we spend time training people on other things, except on
Which is not relevant to the economy.
plumbing.
Right.
But because our society thinks that a plumber is some guy who has not gone to school and can only fix pipes. So
have we maybe revisited the diploma disease that we had there in the 1970s, I think, with that particular note that we had from, was it Ronald Doe? With the diploma disease, the influx of it with the diploma now is actually, so to speak, the degree diseases that we have in the country right now.
Actually, those are the people who ran the economy. And if I ask you how many carpenter friends do you have yourself, you probably don't have
I'll struggle.
Even plumber.
You don't have
painter.
Even a painter that this is my friend, let's have a drink this evening. So we need to begin to discuss this in a much more detailed way in terms of how we socialize. You know, Kenyans are very rough in terms of socialization. If Odote is not a lecturer or some senior person, I don't associate with him. Today, if I'm fired from the university, Odote may not even greet me. I mean, I did an article about how we socialize, how people become friends because of you who you are, instead of
You the person.
You the person.
I will tell you why it has not worked, Dibal. There is hope. Well, I participated 8 years ago. For 8 years, we've been doing what we call occupational qualification framework with the National Industrial Training Authority, and it was funded very well with UNDP. And I was on it the whole 8 years. When Matiang'i came on board, when you look at the framework, there's the theoretical path where you can grow, and there's the practical part where you can grow. If you drop out of school in class 3, you have a leeway to go and do a trade test. After staying in Juakali for some time, do grade 3 trade test, then grade 2, then grade 1, then you can now qualify for a diploma and you become a master craft. You become a craftsman. Then with the craftsman, you can grow to a master craft and you can now be equated with the theorists. So that theorists, when you reach here, we have assessment centers in the middle where we can assess you and equate you to this person who is in the theory path. Because the problem with this framework is, how do you measure your knowledge if you are a plumber? You go and do a lot of work for somebody, he tells you you are just a plumber, he gives you 200 shillings. Because you have no knowledge. Nobody can measure your knowledge. Where is your certification? That's the problem. As somebody brings your car in the Juakali, you make the car very well. You are illiterate, but you are making the car very well. When he's paying you because you are a Juakali man, and you have no knowledge. So there's no certification, there's no what. So that's what we are mitigating. Do you know what happened? After we launched the Occupation Qualification Framework with Matiang'i, Amina Mohammed came in. She gazetted, and it was taken and meshed into the other qualification framework of the country. So it is nowhere, you can see it nowhere.
And that's what I was about to say, that if you go to every county, you'll find that there are technical training institutions that are being established.
Yes.
But the way that they're being established takes us back to the problem we are trying to fix.
Correct.
As opposed to having a framework which is much more practical, which is much more alternative, we want to mainstream.
Mainstream.
We want to then, so we are looking still at your traditional lecturer, we are looking through at your traditional instruction, yet this is supposed to be much more practical. And two, you hear this discussion on this TV. The last time we were here, that's when we were talking about NITA, and now we're talking about it here. When you go to the ground and the village, the people that are supposed to be socialized do not appreciate that there is an alternative that is coming up. People dropped out of class 7, they don't appreciate that there is a way by which they can go up the ladder, and that's the conversation we must be having. Our ministry in charge of industrialization,
Yes.
when was the last time you heard them speaking about this issue?
That is it.
It's a lack of awareness.
Lack of awareness. And commitment.
And lack of policy commitment.
Not
Because
just awareness.
if there's policy commitment, you hear us talking about CBC every day.
No, commitment or not in this sense. The president meets with the Jokalis and he says, I want to meet them again in 1 month because what I've seen here is a raw deal. 1 year down the line, nobody allows him to meet the Jokal again. So it means the people around the president don't show him what should happen in this country.
But I think also
how
there's an
many-
appreciation from the ministry as well that even if you got E or D as a grade, or the E graders as we know them right now, there's still an avenue that you're not a lost basket as it is in this
At least that's
society as well.
accepted.
Yeah,
Accepted.
but I think it was just left there. We've not had any proper policy to actually also
Actually,
back it
let
as
me
it
tell
is.
you what has happened. New research or through the technologies like artificial intelligence are beginning to show that some of those people we thought they were foolish, they were not. If they were taught at the speed that they can understand, they will probably be better than some of us who are where we are. So there isn't anybody we can actually say they are foolish. It is the systems, the policymakers must understand, because we write off people who get D or E. What can you happen? We should be looking at how do we mold this person to be useful in society. I challenge media. You are inviting us here, but as he brings up the point, you have never invited the plumbers here and the carpenters to actually talk about issues of chairs. So we can ask, why are your chairs dancing like this?
Yes.
You know, that's how we can improve society. But we have decided to create an elite class that is the one that comes to media, so people begin to understand. But we need to create role models. Somebody who says, I actually failed, and this is what I did, and this is what I did, this is where I am. This is how you actually motivate some of those who may be feeling bad that I failed, I'm useless in society. So we all have to blame for what has happened.
But Dibal,
As you're winding up, maybe your headline thoughts.
the e-graders that you are talking about,
Yes.
most of them have gone to border sector. But nobody in this country is worried about, I know there's nobody even on this bench who has never boarded the border, even out there. But nobody's worried about a guy who has been carrying you for the last 10 years and he has no license. So it means he has not been certified to ride. And everybody's fighting them, yet they are creating the economy. So what we want to do is that to indict somebody from Minister of Transport, Minister of Industry, Minister of Agriculture, whatever, can we work with the economy builders like the Boda guys and make sure that we are going to give them the skills required, we are going to give them the certification required, we are going to employ them in the market, because then without them, there is no employment.
Thank you. Thank you. Collins Odote, your headline thoughts.
I think my headline thoughts, the conversations today demonstrate to us that there's need for a policy shift, but there's also need to move away from just policy development, policy implementation, because a lot of the things we're talking about have been thought about in the past, but we haven't followed through our action. And that's where the challenge lies for us as a country.
Right. Dr. Bitange.
I think
Professor
we need
Bitange
to work more closely with Parliament, with ministries in shaping some of this. You see what he has said. They created the whole thing, but what was gazetted was completely different from what was desired. So we need to work much more closely and begin to a new narrative, how our people can succeed.
Thank you.
From whether they have failed or not.
Right. Engineer Charles Kalonga. Your closing remarks.
Some things from NITA tomorrow at Kenya School of Monetary Studies, and I know you guys, especially Prof, I know you would want to be there. We are launching what we've been doing over time, so that like when you talk about endangered learning is a very interesting learning, whereby somebody just goes and sits under you and you are doing something, then he copies, then he takes it as a skill. How do we then certify that endangered learning?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. I really want to appreciate you. Professor Bitangen Demo from the University of Nairobi, Professor of Entrepreneurship, thank you for coming through. Also Collins Odote from the University of Nairobi, also an advocate of the High Court. Thank you for coming through as well. Charles Kalomba, who is the General Secretary of the Jua Kali Sector Federation, thank you for coming through as well. Lastly, as also we are winding up, maybe just to read one or two tweets that are coming through. Bill Onai is saying they have failed. The parallel programs were misused and now degrees are dished out in the streets of Nairobi and major towns. The subject matter of university education is no longer there. How do you offer extra curriculum in the streets? No wonder the millennials have a problem. A raft of others as well are here, and we are winding up. Thank you so much for your valued company. My name is Debalana.